Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We are starting a new book this time, and it's a long one.
It is. It's a commitment.
Good one. It's a good one. There's some really, really cool stuff in this book.
We're going to get sucked in chapter 1.
Right away in chapter 1. And the book is?
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So now you know.
Yeah.
There are 48 chapters in this book. This has humans, it has angels, it has weird object lessons. There's some weird stuff that goes on in this book.
And this is chapter 1.
Well, yeah, and the last 9 chapters are really amazing, and just the whole thing, thing. It's a great book. Yeah. There's some really neat theology in here. There are some people who are going to be mentioned in Ezekiel that if you're just reading straight through the Bible, you forgot about by now. I mean, it's just really cool.
Good. So who is this guy, right? So he is both a priest and a prophet of God. Mm-hmm. So it's rare, but not unheard of at this time. And the whole idea, if we had to summarize it, is God is trying to strengthen Ezekiel in the face of the rejection that he is going to face by the nation of Israel.
Yep.
So that's... in a nutshell, you're done with 48 chapters. Right?
I tell you what, because it's going to be hard. It's very difficult. What Ezekiel has to go through this book is, it's like, if God does this to his friends, you don't want to be on the wrong side. Yeah. So what's our timeline here? Where are we at in the timeline?
Well, we learn it in the first 3 verses. We learn a whole lot in the first 3 verses. Yeah. But we are at the time of the split kingdom. So there's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom.
Of Israel,
right. The northern kingdom has been defeated by Assyria and taken away, so they're kind of off the map. Yep. And now we just have the southern kingdom, and Babylon has been knocking on their door.
Yep.
And in fact, Babylon has come in with King Nebuchadnezzar and has, let's say, raided them at least once. And we'll find out it twice so far. Yeah. And what they have done is they have taken gold, silver, left most of the people. I'm sure they killed some, and then they also took a number hostage. Yeah. And the number's like not 5 or 10, it's in the thousands that they have taken. Yep. And we find out that Ezekiel is one of these people. So he's at this time.
Yeah, so in the first we'll call it captivity of Judah, we get Daniel and his friends, and then in the second of 3 captivities, Ezekiel comes across. So Ezekiel is in Babylon. Right.
So he is in Babylon, and he's acting as a priest and a prophet. So if you think about it, it's kind of weird, because who he is being a priest to are people who are now displaced. Yeah. They don't have a home. Right. They've been uprooted. Now they're in Babylon. They can't, I'm sure they have the worst jobs. They're just trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, the nation of Israel is still in Jerusalem, but they're not looking so good either. Right. And they're soon to be defeated, and we'll see in the first 5-10 chapters that's part of the prophecy that happens.
Yeah, so it's interesting because a priest stands between people and God, sort of represents the people to God, right? Yeah. A prophet represents God to the people. So he's serving as a priest for the captives, the exiles. And now God is going to flip it around and say, it's not just time for me to listen to you on behalf of the people. It's time for you to speak for me.
Yeah. So then at the end of chapter 1, we kind of have like a Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. And that is, the big opening that happens, and you got the big ball rolling down. So here, the big ball is, we see heavens open up, and Ezekiel has a divine vision. Yeah. Which is unbelievable. And in this vision, he sees bright lights, glowing embers, and he sees God in here. Yeah. And he sees angels, and he gives a vivid description of a type of angel, which he defines later as a cherubim.
Yeah. So we won't find the word cherub or cherubim in this chapter. Yeah. We don't see it until chapter 10, I think it is. But this is really interesting, and there are really a ton of connections from Ezekiel chapter 1 to the book of the Revelation.
Yeah, exactly.
Tons of them.
Exactly. And when we think of cherubim, we see the little baby with the wings and the ding. That is not the description in here.
No.
So we see a human form with 4 faces, and there's a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, and we could spend hours talking about why
All
those
the little details,
and what that does. But to me, the coolest thing is nobody changes direction. So in other words, if my human face is going this way and the eagle's over here and the ox is behind me, if I want to go this way, I don't turn and go.
You just go.
It just goes.
Well, then you've got
And
the
it kind of
wheel and
blows
the wheel within the wheel and full of eyes and the wings.
I don't even know how
all
the wings
different-
work, right?
Yeah.
4 sets of wings.
Yep.
Everybody gets a set of wings. Okay, I can see that. Wings coming out. But if there's 4 things, the wings are touching each other.
Yep.
And then there's 2 sets because there's also a set covering themselves too.
Right.
Yeah. So read it slow.
Yeah, that's right.
We often say that, right? About take your time with it. Take your time with this. I mean, it's exciting. You can read through it, but stop, back up, and take your time with it.
It would be worth also, if you wanted to, and you're reading chapter 1 here, pop over to Revelation chapter 4, because you have 4 living creatures in both. You have this pavement or this glass or this sapphire or this something
This platform
in front of the throne.
Yep.
You have the throne that's shining with light. I mean, I'm telling you, Ezekiel 1, Revelation 4. You're gonna be doing like, really cool stuff here.
Yeah, so Ezekiel also sees a platform, and it seems to be up higher, and God's throne room seems to be up there.
And he describes what he sees like a rainbow.
Yeah.
Just like John. Now, John says the rainbow is like an emerald, but what exactly?
Yep. And how does that work?
So the fact that Ezekiel, 600 years before Jesus, and John, who saw this 100 years after Jesus, so 700-year difference.
Yeah.
It's difference seeing the same thing and describing it so closely, right? Is just really cool.
It is. In chapter 2, first of all, Ezekiel only shows up, the word Ezekiel only shows up a couple times in here.
Yeah.
But Ezekiel's referred to all the time, but he's referred to as Son of Man.
Like 90 some times in this book, God just refers to him as Son of Man. You go do this.
Hey you.
Yeah. And I think because most of this is a vision, a lot of this, I guess, is a vision. This just vision and vision and vision. And so I think especially in the early on, he's seeing this big display in heaven, and God is reminding him of his humanity. This isn't the same Son of Man that Jesus uses for himself from Daniel chapter 7. This is, you are human. What I'm doing is bigger than that.
Right. And we see that especially in chapter 2, where he is commissioned.
Yes.
Right. So it's, here's your job, and his job, and I love it. It says, "Stand and I will speak with you."
Yeah.
And then the wind kind of helps him up.
Lifts him up a little bit. Yeah. Did we say that he's about 30 years old?
We didn't.
But
that's in one of the first 4 verses. Right?
Yeah. So he's 30 years old, serving as a priest, and now God is commissioning him as a prophet.
Yeah. How freaked out would you be? So he is going to be sent to the nation of Israel, who has rebelled against God and who is continuing to do so.
Rebel against God.
And he tells Ezekiel, do not fear them or their words, right? He's given them a great amount of encouragement. And he says, here's your job. All you have to do is tell them what I tell you. And that's the whole job. And then God told them to eat a scroll, and some words on this scroll were laments and mourning and woe on it. Mm-hmm. And you think, this isn't going to be very good. But he eats it in chapter 3, and it tastes sweet like honey.
So there's another connection, because in Revelation chapter 10,
John
is given a scroll to eat, or a little book to eat, not a scroll, a little book to eat. And same deal. It tasted sweet in his mouth, but bitter in his stomach because of the prophecy that he had to make.
Yeah, and then he gets a further description about what his job is. And the job is, God saying, I'm going to tell you what to tell them. You need to tell the nation of Israel or a specific person, and here's the deal. they're not going to be willing to listen to you.
Yeah.
And don't think that's bad because they don't listen to me either.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's not just that they're rejecting you, and we
Yeah.
see this throughout the prophets. It's not that they're rejecting you; they're rejecting me.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stand and speak for me,
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of what I mean. It's really what Jesus told the apostles in John 14, 15, and 16. The servant is not greater than the master. If they hated me, they're gonna hate you. Right?
Yeah.
This is just it's a timeless truth. It's always been like that.
Yeah, so God says, look, they are hard-headed and hard-hearted. And he says, I'm going to make you that way so you can deal with them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting point there.
Yeah, he is not going in softly.
Yeah. So Ezekiel is actually transported to Tel Aviv. Is that right? And he sits there dumbfounded for 7 days. And yeah, right. And you're like, oh, what a wimp. But he's been through a lot.
Already, and he hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah. And then God tells him again that, now he's using a different expression, but he says that you need to be a watchman for the house of Israel, up in the tower, taking the view. And then he said, whatever I tell you, you must give as a warning to Israel. And he says, if you don't do this, that wicked person is going to die, and I'm going to blame you for it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I don't know that we can use this as a timeless truth, claim it for ourselves.
Right.
And I've heard this, I've heard people say, if I don't share the gospel with someone and they go to hell, it's my fault. Number one, no. Okay, because even here God says they're still going to be punished for their own sin.
Right.
But
so this isn't a salvation.
It's not a salvation thing. It's not this is still God's people, Israel. And, but he did say, if because I've told you that I'm going to judge them and they don't know that, but you do, and you don't give them the warning that I have commanded you to give them.
Right.
I'm going to hold that against you. Not that they didn't repent necessarily, but that he did not, or that he withheld the information. It was his sin that he would be judged for.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he also said the opposite. If you do deliver the message and that person doesn't listen, he's still going to die.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be responsible.
Right. Yeah.
So in other words, tell the person.
Do your job.
Yeah,
right. Do your
it.
job. If you don't do your job, then you're going to be punished, disciplined.
Yeah. And then he says, I'm going to send you to your house for a while, and don't get all upset about this, but you're going to be tied up for a while, and you're not going to be able to speak for a while. And I think this is part of the really.
Yeah, there are throughout. We see a little bit of this in Jeremiah, but Ezekiel, you're going to see one. I don't know of another word. Object lesson after another, where God is either going to command Ezekiel to do something or to not do something, or God is going to do it to him. And some of this stuff sounds so weird, but it's meant to be an object lesson to the people who are watching him, because he's there with them. They are watching him. They are listening to him. So what he does is God explaining.
Yeah. So in chapter 4, there are 3 objects lessons. I'll tell what the object is, and you will tell the meaning of it.
The lesson.
That's the way this is going to work. So remember, he's mute. He can't say anything, but he's supposed to take a brick and inscribe Israel on it. So he has a brick.
Jerusalem specifically.
Oh, Jerusalem.
Right?
Sorry.
Yeah, because it's about the city. The city is the capital of Judah, right?
Then he must build a diorama.
Yes.
And
Legos.
Yeah, and have the brick, and then have the ramps and the siege battle rams, soldiers.
Soldier guys around.
He had to make soldiers. So you can kind of see that. And then he needs to take an iron frying pan and set it as an iron wall between himself and the city.
Right.
And this is Ezekiel and God besieging Israel.
Yeah.
And now you'll tell us what this is all
Well,
about.
it's a prophecy, because Israel has yet to be taken completely, or Jerusalem has yet to be taken completely, not Israel, Judah, right? So Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in, and that iron wall, there's nothing that can stop that. Because in the little diorama, the siege has already taken place. There will be no protection. Ezekiel's not going to be able to get in. God is not going to help them. That will take place.
Right, that will happen.
Yep.
And the next lesson, he's still mute. Now Ezekiel has to sleep with the brick. And he has to, and it's very specific, right? Where he's laying, what he's doing.
Which
he has
side
to
he's lying
lay
on.
on his left side for 390 days, 1 day for each year of their iniquity.
Iniquity, right. Because, don't forget, this is not a new thing with Israel. They've been rebelling for
Since the
centuries,
time of Moses.
right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Then after he's done that, so 390 days, over a year, he then flips over to his right side for 40 days to bear the iniquity of Judah.
Yep.
And that would be the southern kingdom
Yep.
in there. And then God will help him. He was going to tie him up with a rope so he can't flip around at night and turn around.
Yeah.
What is this lesson?
Well, it's the same thing, is because it's this is sort of foreshadowing a little bit, because he says, you are going to bear the iniquity of them. Now, the northern kingdom's already been taken into Assyria. Judah has started to be taken already. Right. But again, the people watching him, they're going to see him suffering not taking the sins of or whatever, but suffering because of Israel and because of Judah, with that whole little diorama thing going on.
And a remembrance of, hey, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the movie of the day.
Yeah.
Or the way a movie to be portrayed.
Yep.
Okay, then the next one is he's still mute. He needs to put wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and splint in a container, and that's his food.
And this has been popularized as the Ezekiel bread, or the Ezekiel diet.
The diet?
Yep. So there's a Daniel diet, there's Ezekiel bread, there's a whatever. This isn't a good thing. People who are saying, oh, I've lost all this weight on Ezekiel bread. Well, you would have.
Yeah. So here's how much he can eat. He can eat 8 ounces a day. For 390 days.
Yeah.
And he can only eat at fixed times. For water, he can have 1.5 pints. And again, that's at fixed times. So all day he's eating 8 ounces of this beans and 1.5 pints of water.
Yeah. Yep, God is basically starving him.
Minimum amount.
Just minimal, just to keep him alive. Basically.
Now, what's interesting is he needs to bake it, and God says use human excrement as your fire, and he pushes back. As a priest, I've never been ceremonial unclean,
right?
And God graciously says, okay, use cow.
So there's 3 things going on here. First of all, the fact that he has to eat and drink this is a sign that this is what's going to happen in Judah. Their food is going to be rationed. Their water is going to be rationed.
There's no way to get stuff in and out. Yeah.
They're going to end up cannibalizing each other. They will be eating each other. They will be cooking over human excrement. Right?
Because that's all they have.
Because that's all they have. Right? So God is having Ezekiel play out what they'll actually be doing. Couple things. That's number 1. Number 2, he does push back, because under the law you cannot use that for your food. And he's a priest, and he knows the law, and he says, hold on a second, I get the point, I know this is an object lesson, but I've never done anything like that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that's the piece he pushes back on.
And God says, fine, you're not that God didn't know. I think it maybe was a little bit of a test, but God said, then I will allow the object lesson to be different, even though the reality will still be that way.
Right.
Number 3, these are the first words that Ezekiel has spoken in the book. There's stuff where he's written, I saw this, I went here, I did whatever. So it's still first person narrative, but he hasn't spoken yet. And the first words recorded, unless I missed something, the first words recorded, God has been speaking to him, but his first words are, whoa, hold on a second, I don't think I'm allowed to do that. How cool is that? I mean, that's sort of the tone of the book, isn't it? I mean, that's
So chapter 5 still plays to the exact same thing that we're talking about. Ezekiel is to take a sword and cut off part of his hair and part of his beard.
Yeah.
And in our world, what's the big deal? But again, as a priest, it's a big deal.
He's not allowed to cut his beard as a priest. Do not trim the corners of your hair, trim the corners of your beard.
And I go back to David. David had some priests that were in a different area, and they had their head shaved or beard shaved.
Yep.
And David was, all right, you guys stay there until it grows
back
back
out.
so you don't have shame.
Yep.
And then I think he went and annihilated everybody. Everybody there.
It was humiliating for the soldiers, even more so for a priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. And Ezekiel is to do three things with the hair. Each represents what's going to happen to the people in Jerusalem. So a third of the hair he was supposed to burn up, and that symbolized a third of the people who are going to die by fire in Jerusalem.
Yep.
A third of it, they would die by the sword outside of Jerusalem. And then a third would be scattered to the foreign nations. So these people wouldn't necessarily die, but they're not going to be in Jerusalem anymore.
Yep.
And then there would be some remnants, a few hairs that he had to attach to himself.
Sewed into his garment. And
that was the believing remnant.
the remnant.
Right?
That's a great concept.
Yeah, that is. Isn't that a cool concept?
Yep. Some of the people wouldn't necessarily die with fire. He was supposed to burn the hairs. But God said there will be famine, there will be plague, there will be multiple things. Basically, but they're going to die in Jerusalem.
And then the rest of chapter 5 is actually the message that Ezekiel preached.
Yep.
And notice when he says it, he says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says."
Yeah.
So he's doing his part of repeating what God said.
This is direct. This is dictation. This is, you are not allowed to change the words. This is what God said. This is what you need to know. Yeah. And so both his object lessons, his actions, and his words had to be not just accurate, but precise. Very, very specific. Yeah.
So that's it. A lot going on in here, and it's exciting, and it's moving, and it's quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And the book really isn't going to slow down. There's some narrative. There's some really neat stuff in here. I think you're going to enjoy it, especially if you've never read Ezekiel before or it's been a long time. I think you're really going to enjoy it. There's some really neat doctrine in here and some other stuff. So buckle up, because we're going to be here for a while. Yeah. We got through 5 chapters, but there are still 48. We'll be here for a while. So we're going to not rush through. We'll take our time because, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in here. As things come up, please ask your questions. Send them in to us. We'd love to answer your questions. We don't talk about everything on the video. Tell us the stuff that you saw. But did you see this? Or you didn't talk about this or whatever. We'd love to hear that stuff. Subscribe. Send this, forward it to your friends and family because they need to hear this as well. And we will pick up right here next time and just keep working through it.
Bye, everybody.